Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Mr. Joey Bondoc as our resource speaker. Mr. Bondoc is the research head of Colliers Philippines. He covers residential, office, retail, leisure, and industrial
Ayan,
sectors.
kami
He
lagay ka na
regularly
eh.
conducts market overview presentations to equity analysts, property investors, and real estate firms. Additionally, his columns in the Philippine Star, Business World, and the Philippine Daily Inquirer make him a thought leader in the industry. Having Joey here gives us a great opportunity to gain a solid understanding of the real estate market dynamics that will help us make informed REIT investing decisions. Without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Joey Bondoc. Hi, Joey.
Hello. Hi, Ali. Good evening. And John, good
Good
evening.
evening.
And again, thank you for inviting me. And I'm really excited to share insights and to provide updates on the Philippine property market and to, of course, help you decide on your next REIT investment. So let's look at the Philippine economy, the Philippine property market in general, and the segments that are generating recurring income, and how will this shape redefine the REIT market here in the Philippines, which I believe, as compared to other economies, it's on its early stages still. And how will this further evolve moving forward, especially as we see the property market evolving, rebounding, especially after the disruption that we saw in 2020 and 2021. So let's look at the slides. I think I have here some economic slides first, just to set the stage on the property market presentation. So let's check the next slides, please. Okay, so next slide. So if we look at this next slide on the Philippine economy, as you can see here, we grew by 5.7% in the first quarter of 2024, making the Philippines the fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia. And the forecast looking very good, 5.8 to 7%. So the Philippine economy, again, likely to be the fastest growing in the region in Southeast Asia, if not the second fastest, only after Vietnam. But again, what's really driving this economic growth is the money sent home by Filipinos working abroad. So if you look at the next slide, remittances continue to expand and growing by about $37 billion in 2023, making the Philippines the fastest growing economy. Again, in Southeast Asia, the Philippines is primarily a consumption driven economy. So more than 70% of our economic output accounted for by personal consumption. And what's really driving that is the growth in remittances, money sent home by Filipinos working abroad. The forecast is also looking very good. The central bank is projecting remittances to grow by 3% this year. So imagine that another $38 billion that will be injected to the Philippine economy, and that will continue to propel the consumption-driven Philippine economy and will really help drive the residential requirements of Filipinos, especially the OFW remittance fueled households across the Philippines. However, the problem is, if you look at this next slide, inflation is again inching up. And again, look at June 2024 inflation at about 3.7%. We were starting to be more optimistic when we started the year. January 2024 inflation 2.8%, but it's again starting to inch up, starting to increase 6.5%. That's the basic interest rate, is still elevated. Let's see if the central bank will cut interest rates. But I think based on reports and statement from the Philippine Central Bank, the Monetary Board, there is likely to be a cut for the remainder of 2024. By how much, that has yet to be seen. Hopefully, that further stokes the Philippine economy and expands the manufacturing activities of a lot of industrial locators, even the expansion plans of office occupiers, outsourcing companies, and other locators in industrial parks. Let's look at the next slide on land values across Metro Manila. So they continue to increase. In Makati CBD, the last transaction that we recorded was at about 1.6 million per square meter. If you look at Makati CBD, you have, for example, parcels of developable land in Salcedo Village, Legazpi Village, asking rates of about 1.2, 1.3 million pesos per square meter. So they continue to increase. It's a similar trend that we're seeing in Fort Bonifacio, in Ortigas Center, and the Bay Area. Land values at about 400,000 to about 900,000 pesos per square. So let me now shift to the residential sector. If you look at other property segments in Metro Manila, we're really seeing substantial increase, and the recovery is definitely on the horizon. So if you shift to the next slide, we are definitely seeing a recovery in the office segment. Next slide, please. Um, Overall, what I can say for the office market in Metro Manila is that outsourcing companies continue to occupy office space. Of course, we're seeing BPO companies starting to rationalize office spaces, and some of them implementing work from home, work from anywhere, and that has been resulting in an increase in the demand or take up for co-working, flexible workspaces, especially in Metro Manila. But outside of Metro Manila, we're also seeing substantial
Recording in
increase
progress.
in terms of office space take up, especially for the co-working segment in Cebu, in Clark. In fact, some major deals, co-working space deals that we have recorded over the past 6 to 12 months were from Cebu as well as Pampanga. So now let's look at the next slide. This includes the total office space across Metro Manila. But before that, let me look at the transactions movement. As you can see here, if you look at year-on-year deals movement in terms of office transaction, that increased by 88%, so almost doubled. However, quarter on quarter, we saw a drop in office transactions by 27%. Next slide, please.
Sir Joey, can I ask a
Yes,
question po?
sure, John. Yes,
So you mentioned, Sir Joey, kanina na the BPO sector is still rationalizing. So you're
that's
not
correct.
seeing a reversal of the work from home trends? Kasi anecdotally,
Yeah,
they've been saying sa newspaper that the offices are starting to ask the employees to come back to on-site,
yes,
full
yes,
on-site. You're
yeah.
not seeing that still in the data?
No, John, because these BPO companies continue to rationalize office space. We have clients, for example, that used to occupy 3 floors of traditional office space. They have streamlined, rationalized their office space requirements and are down to a single floor that they occupy. You have to note that the office space, or traditional office space, its use has also evolved. So right now, office space is only used where employees can collaborate, brainstorm, or do their town hall meetings. Right now, you have companies that were previously occupying 2 floors of office space, but recently transferred to co-working flexible workspaces in Makati CBD, for example. So these are the trends that we are seeing right now. It also depends on the transactions that they are handling. For example, those into financial information, credit card companies, insurance. Of course, they would require the employees to be in the traditional office space because of confidential financial information and financial transactions that they handle. But some companies into, for example, contact center, support services, they allow the employees to work from home. So those are the trends that we're seeing right now. just to answer and provide additional information based on your question, John. So as you can see here, it's still the third-party outsourcing companies that continue to occupy office space. Pogos, well, I know that the headlines are now filled with the news about President Marcos's recent announcement on Pogo ban, but I think we will be getting questions about Pogos later. But what's interesting here is that you have traditional companies that continue to occupy office space. And when I mention and say traditional, this includes government agencies that have been transferring to newer, higher quality office buildings in Metro Manila and are taking advantage of rental correction that we're experiencing right now across the capital region. You have to note that since 2020, from 2020 to 2023, end of 2023, lease rates in Metro Manila have corrected by a combined 40%, almost 40%. So if previously you were leasing out office space at 1,000 pesos a square, now you can get office space at about 600 pesos per square meter. And given that we're seeing substantial completion of office space in Metro Manila and even rising vacancies, I'll discuss that in detail later. We're now seeing government agencies occupying higher quality newer office spaces because these office spaces are being offered at a discount. So that's one trend that we're seeing in the market right now. But let me now go to the next slide. If we look at transactions in Metro Manila submarkets, the Bay Area, again, this is a government agency that occupied more than 30,000 square meters of office space. So this supports my statement earlier wherein I highlighted government agencies occupying, doubling up these newer higher quality office spaces. They are implementing flight to value, flight to quality. So transferring to newer office spaces at a discount. Look at DTI here occupying an office space, an office building in Buendia in Makati. But across other major business districts, we still see increasing vacancies. So vacancy in Metro Manila on average is at about 19%. But if you look at the fringes of Makati, Malugay, Pasong Tamo, Buendia, you're seeing vacancy at more than 30%. The Bay Area still a business location, a business district. We're also seeing elevated vacancy. So you now have these business locations, business hubs, where vacancy would range between 20 to 30%, even higher than the average office vacancy in Metro Manila currently at about 19%. Next slide, we will be discussing other shifts, trends that we're seeing. And as you can see here, we still have about 2.5 billion square meters of vacant office space in Metro Manila. And given the substantial office space that is still vacant, it will probably take between 4 to 5 years to fully absorb all these vacated office space in the market. And of course, a portion of these vacated office spaces care of Pogo. So in 2020 and 2021, I would say that much of the vacated office space is because of the pandemic restriction and also because of the Pogos leaving Metro Manila, the Pogo exodus. Next slide, please. So if you look at the vacancy across sub-locations in Metro Manila, so you can see here, Ortigas Center, 14%, Fort Bonifacio, 15%, Makati, 10%. Makati records still a very good vacancy. And I would say that these are three business locations where developers, landlords can still command premium rents for their buildings. The problem is, if you go to Makati Fringe, again, Buendia, Pasong Tamo, Malugay area, look at the vacancy, more than 30%. The Bay Area, 27%. In fact, Bay Area at some point, fourth quarter of 2023, its vacancy even reached almost 40%. But that vacancy somehow has been tempered by the government agencies that have been occupying sizable office space in the Bay Area business hub. But other business locations, Alabang, as you can see here, almost 30% vacancy. And this is one sublocation that continues to see challenging leasing from BPO companies as well as traditional firms that are occupying office spaces. Next slide, please.
Sir Joey.
Yes, John.
So based on what you're saying, diba? Kasi again, a lot of the people in the audience right now, puro REIT investors, right?
That's
And
correct.
by the way, guys, for your reference, si Sir Joey, he is unable to specifically mention a particular developer. Bawal kasi sa all years eh. So
Yes.
ang ano ko lang, mga comments ko, broad strokes lang. So you're saying, sir, na 19% vacancies ang
Yes.
average
In
Metro
Metro
Manila.
Manila, average,
But
yes.
but may maraming mga areas na nasa
That's
30%,
correct.
even 40%, right?
Yeah.
So talagang it shows you diba? Kasi nahihirapan ako, Sir Joey, nahihirapan akong na hindi i-mention yung name eh. So let's say kami, marami kami dito, mahilig kami sa A-REIT, di ba? And something like I know, I'm sorry.
No, that's
Kasi
fine.
mga properties ng A-REIT, mga properties ng A-REIT, di ba? Pretty much Central Business District. Gawin mo na lang
Yes.
general. Basta nasa Central Business District ka, tapos basta nasa BGC,
That's
basta
correct.
nasa, let's say, Ayala, EDSA,
Yeah.
those are safe. Those are safe.
I would say so, because even if you look at, this is an objective assessment. This is an objective assessment. If you look at the tenants of these buildings, these are multinational BPOs, traditional companies, shared service companies, and they are likely to occupy those office spaces and even renew for say 3-5 years. So it's a very good tenant mix, I would say, John, for these buildings that really have the profiles of these tenants that will continue to occupy those office spaces and again even renew. So that's a very good profile, a very good mix for these BPO companies, BPO buildings, for these developers to house all these multinational corporations, shared service companies that will likely be in those buildings in the medium to long term. So that's a very good prospect for these developers to house all these MNCs that are likely to expand. In fact, John, I would even mention some buildings, for example, are they housing companies that are into health services, allied health services? For example, those into diabetes management. If you have BPOs that are into health information management, for example, what we're seeing right now is that these companies, tenants continue to expand and continue to occupy, look for office spaces, expansive office spaces across Metro Manila, because this is one subsegment in the office sector that continues to grow. Those into health related services, health information management.
Thank you for that, Joey.
Yes, John. So again, let me now continue. If you look at my next slide here, so again, look at the office lease rates. We're seeing substantial correction, especially for business locations that have elevated vacancy. And this include the Bay Area, fringe of Makati, as well as Alabang. So there's not much difference for sublocations that still have vacancies that are below the overall average in Metro Manila, which is 19%. And I'm talking about business districts such as Makati CBD, Fort Bonifacio, and Ortigas Center. Next slide. So these are the notable completion, first quarter of 2024. So these are buildings in Makati CBD, in Fort Bonifacio, as well as Ortigas Center. So overall, 96,000 square meters of office space completed in the first 3 months of 2024. And the total office supply right now in Metro Manila stands at about 14.4 million square meters. Next slide. So this is the annual supply in Metro Manila. This is interesting, John, because if you look at total new supply in the capital region from 2024 to 2026, we will be down to about 450,000 square meters of new office space every year. Just to provide context, at the height of the POGO demand from 2017 to 2019, we were completing 900,000 to 1 million square meters of office space across Metro Manila. And of course, developers really took advantage of the growing demand from the POGO sector, offshore gaming sector from China. But now developers are starting to, well, turn off the supply tap, meaning they're now launching less projects, less new office supply in Metro Manila. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of what's happening in the Metro Manila office sector. Vacancy at 19%. And we will likely end the year at about 19.6%. But note that when we did this projection, we have not factored in the total POGO ban that was announced by President Marcos yesterday. We, in fact, have revised that forecast, but the new forecast will be released in our next property briefing that will be on July 31. So if you're interested, of course, I can provide another session just to update you on what happened to the office market in Metro Manila second quarter of this year and our revised forecast for the remainder of 2024 and even up to 2025. Next slide. So these are the vacated spaces. As you can see, they are still increasing across Metro Manila, despite some occupiers still looking for office space and taking up office space across the capital region. Next slide. This is our forecast. So if you look at our projection up to 2028, again, that will likely increase again. Still elevated. We saw vacancy in Metro Manila of only about 4-5% at the height of the POGO demand from 2017 to 2019, but that started to increase in 2020 because of the COVID disruption and lockdowns imposed by the government. Again, if you look at this forecast, it has yet to factor in the impact of the POGO ban, but our forecast is that the vacancy will remain elevated to about 14% up to 2028. Next slide. Again, flexible workspace is an offshoot of the work from anywhere scheme implemented by a lot of companies. Note that the flexible workspace saw a substantial increase in vacancy of about 40% at the height of the pandemic in 2020, and then it dropped to about 20% by first quarter of 2024. So as you can see here, Fort Bonifacio, Makati, Ortigas CBD are some of the sub-locations in Metro Manila that continue to house flexible workspaces and even the expanding co-working space operators, including Regius, IWG, and the KMC Solutions. Next slide. So transactions outside of Metro Manila, as you can see here, Cebu, Pampanga, Davao. So no longer surprising given that these are still the most attractive office locations outside of the capital region. But what's interesting here is that for the first quarter of 2024, Cebu accounted for a third of total office space deals that we recorded outside of Metro Manila. And one of the major transactions that we have recorded in Cebu is Concentrix, which occupied 10,000 square meters of office space in Cebu Exchange Tower. This is the office owned by Artaland in Cebu. Next slide. So again, we are seeing these new locations that will be viable for transactions, BPO deals, and which are likely to house more BPO companies, which are the most attractive locations in terms of housing expansive office space requirements of BPOs. As you can see here, these are Metro Cebu, Pampanga, Bacolod, Cavite, Iloilo, Davao, as well as Laguna. Next slide. So I'm now done with the office market presentation. Let me now shift to another property sector that is generating recurring income, and this is the retail segment. What we have been seeing so far is that developers continue to renovate and innovate their retail spaces. Foreign retailers are making a comeback here in Metro Manila. And we're seeing the attractiveness and the viability of transit-oriented retail centers. Next slide. All over Metro Manila, we have 7.5 million square meters of leasable retail space. And we saw the completion of 280,000 square meters from the fourth quarter of 2023 to first quarter of 2024. Next slide. These are the recently completed of retail spaces, retail centers. Gateway Mall 2 by um, Araneta Property. So that's 190,000 square meters of gross leasable retail space. Next slide. One Ayala, of course, by Ayala Land, 44,000 square meters of leasable retail space completed fourth quarter of 2023, and another transit-oriented retail development. Next slide. GH Mall in San Juan, 47,000 square meters of leasable retail space and completed fourth quarter of 2023. It will house 290 retail outlets. Next slide, please. So these are the upcoming malls that will be opening from 2024 to 2028. And we will see 160,000 square meters of new retail space annually from 2024 up to 2028. So just to give you an idea, let's look at the future malls, upcoming malls across Metro Manila. Next slide, please. So we're seeing massive redevelopment, and Ayala Land, for example, allocating 13 billion pesos for the renovation, redevelopment of its malls in Cebu, Glorieta, of course, Greenbelt 2, and of course, Trinoma in Quezon City. Next slide. But note that 13 billion pesos excludes the redevelopment of the first Greenbelt Mall, and it will undergo a major renovation, a major facelift. It opened in 1988 and it will reopen in 2028. What's interesting is that this Greenbelt Mall, this expanded, renovated mall, will now feature a park, more expansive shopping spaces, office spaces, of course, a hotel, and then larger cinemas. Next slide, please. Shangri-La Plaza will also be renovated, and it will feature a mix of local and foreign F&B retailers. Next slide. Robinson's Forum. So it will be redeveloped, and it will open in, it's a 6-story mall, and it will be completed in 2026. And it will complement the much vaunted, the Jewel office tower of RLC. Next slide. So food and beverage continues to occupy much of retail space in Metro Manila. In fact, they will cover more than 40% of new mall space from 20 over the next 12 months. So it's interesting that the F&B retailers continue to take up physical mall space, maybe also because of the Filipinos' affinity for food. Next slide. So vacancy in the mall space at about 15%. This is an increase from 14.4% that we recorded third quarter of 2023. The only concern that I have for the retail sector is that vacancy will likely increase to 17% by end of 2024, mainly because we still see sizable retail space that will be completed in Metro Manila for the remainder of the year. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, vacancy across certain malls. Of course, you have the likes of SM, Ayala, Robinsons. They have major malls, regional malls, super regional malls with gross leasable retail space of 50,000, 100,000 square meters. And they are almost fully occupied, ranging from about 98 and 99%. Next slide. The problem is Filipinos have now been skimping on food and beverage and non-alcoholic beverages, mainly because of elevated inflation. What's very good is that, and this is a very good news also for developers that have massive leisure hotel footprint, is that Filipinos continue to spend on travel, restaurants, and hotels. As you can see here, based on the breakdown of consumer spending patterns of Filipinos spending on travel, tourism, recreation, and culture and transportation continues to increase. Next slide. Again, food and beverage will likely occupy substantial mall space over the next 12 months, and even fast fashion. These two segments likely to cover almost 80% of a new mall space absorption over the next 12 months. Next slide. So these are new retailers, as you can see here, that will be opening and occupying new mall space over the next 12 months. Next slide. What's interesting is that some foreign retailers that previously left the Philippines are now making a comeback. I'm talking about Aeropostale, Benetton, for example, in Shangri-La Plaza Mall, Aeropostale in One Ayala by Ayala Land, of course, Ritas in Festival Mall by FLI, and then NBA Store making a comeback at the SM Mall of Asia. Next slide. So transit-oriented retail is viable, but look at certain areas. Where are these transit-oriented retail shops built? Where are they located? Will they be able to attract commuters that have very good, high disposable income and purchasing power? So far, we're seeing the attractiveness of One Ayala as well as Araneta City Terminal. Next slide. So as you can see, infrastructure projects lined up by the government. I understand that President Marcos has again committed to build better more during his State of the Nation address yesterday. And this is a testament to that, the government really amplifying its allocation and infrastructure. So we will see massive infra projects, New Manila International Airport in Bulacan, MRT-7, of course, subway, which will have daily capacity of 500,000, MRT-7, 350,000 daily commuters. New Manila International Airport that will have about 35 million annual capacity. NAIA will be redeveloped and its capacity will be doubled from 31 million to 62 million. It's a very interesting, very massive projects that will be game changers in the property sector. So look for developers that have projects, master plan communities that are developed, built near these major infrastructure projects. Next slide. So work where you shop. This is a trend that we're seeing right now. We believe that the co-working spaces are viable locators within a mall. So this is based on a Colliers USA survey wherein they found that amongst respondents of this survey, they found that malls are very interesting locations for co-working spaces. More than 70% of respondents saying that malls are viable location sites for flexible or co-working locators. Next slide, please. It's the same Colliers USA survey that found that employees working within a co-working space located in the mall have a greater propensity to shop, greater propensity to stay within a mall, and greater propensity also to spend. So this is a very good proposition for co-working spaces to be located inside a mall. And why not? Because malls also provide access to parking. They also have very good transportation link and also other locators in the mall. For example, a restaurant, a fast fashion retailer can provide discounts or vouchers to employees that are located in a co-working space that is in a mall. So there's a very good partnership opportunity within these locators located inside a retail center, co-working spaces, as well as F&B locators, as well as fast fashion retailers. Very interesting proposition for co-working facilities. And especially now that this segment is rebounding, post-COVID. Next slide. So what will sustain the retail sector? New foreign retailers because of retail trade liberalization implemented by the government. Also, we're seeing improving consumer confidence, mainly because the employment situation is improving. We're seeing employment levels that are even better than pre-pandemic rates. We're also seeing the attractiveness and feasibility of transit-oriented retail. So look for developers that are constructing these retail shops that are located near massive infrastructure projects, subways, railways, airports developed by the government, and also continued innovation and renovation of mall space. That will likely be heightened moving forward. At Colliers, we always say that retailers need to innovate and renovate, otherwise they will evaporate and dissipate. Next slide, please.
Sir Joey.
Yes, John.
Sir Joey, before we move on to the
hotel, yes.
Yes, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, marami sa amin here very interested in the mall space. Why?
That's
Kasi
correct.
both RCR and AREIT, they've been infusing
Yes. Yeah.
their malls into their REITs, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I saw here na massive expansion, and we know talaga na Filipinos talaga, we love our malls, diba?
That's right. Malls are our de facto public spaces. We don't have a lot of parks in the Philippines and Metro Manila, so they serve as our public spaces.
Correct. So my question is, kasi I remember reading around 10 years ago, yung before the fall of yung malls in the US, di ba?
Yes.
Kinakain na siya bigla ng Amazon.
That's right.
That happened at a time wherein there was 10 square foot for every American shopper.
Yeah.
Kasi compare that to Europe and Japan, I think it was around 3 to 5 square foot per Japanese and European shopper.
Yeah.
In the Philippines, you guys are not seeing na sobrang overmalled na tayo.
Yeah, well, not yet. Because I think right now what developers have been doing, the retail operators, is that there is a good mix between online and offline shopping. That's why right now we're seeing omni platforms. So you now have the brick and mortar spaces, but they are complementing this with their online presence. So that's what developers have been doing. And again, John, if you look at developers such as Ayala Land, for example, Robinson's Land, SM, they are aggressively innovating and renovating. Again, I want to highlight and I want to stress this. Developers need to innovate and renovate, otherwise they will evaporate and dissipate. And this is a strategy that we have been seeing from all these listed developers. They are allocating massive capital infusion, massive funds to redevelop their retail spaces, even building massive cinemas. We're now seeing the recovery of experiential, immersive retail where families, friends, office mates get to do activities together. Activity centers are now proliferating, and developers are really organizing a lot of events just to draw interest from the consumers, from the public, and to further entice them to visit their malls and to further raise consumer traffic footfall within their retail shops. So I think right now developers are really doing this very good strategy of innovating and renovating their retail spaces, and they're allocating massive amounts of capital to really drum up interest within their retail centers. And I think really right now, developers are doing this very good strategy and employing the right thing, innovating and renovating their new mall spaces.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sir Joey. If we're just talking a slice of the mall sector, diba?
Yeah.
Let's say we're talking about the tier A malls like Glorieta,
Yes,
and Greenbelt.
yeah,
The occupancy rate is in the high 90s, right?
that's correct. So these retail centers continue to achieve very good, very high occupancies, 95, 98, 99%. Maybe mainly because if you look at SM, for example, they have anchor tenants. So they have their Watsons, for example, and they really continue to occupy massive retail spaces in their expansive malls, right? Of course, Ayala Land, also the Ali malls, experiencing very good occupancy rates. So these are very good indicators for developers that have massive retail footprint, not just in Metro Manila, but across the Philippines.
And also, Sir Joey, again, please feel free to correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong. One of the reasons why I'm so excited about yung mga mall infusion
Yeah.
right? Am I correct in saying that yung rent escalation sa malls mas
Mm.
mataas siya than the office spaces and other sectors?
That's correct, John. We're seeing that because, again, look at office lease rates. They corrected by a combined almost 40%, 2020 up to end 2023. But right now, in the retail sector, we have yet to recover fully pre-pandemic mall lease rates, but we are starting to see marginal increases in retail lease rates. So that's a very good indicator again, a massive upside still compared to office lease rates for the retail segment across the Philippines, especially in Metro Manila. That's why, John, one of our key recommendations for locators is to start locking in retail spaces in key business districts where there will be massive new office and residential developments lined up by other developers. So, for example, Makati CBD, Fort Bonifacio, Ortigas Center, they will be housing new office buildings. They will be seeing the development and even redevelopment of office towers and construction of new residential projects. Of course, that will be your immediate market. That's why it's it's a very good opportunity at this point to start locking in retail spaces in those business hubs that are still seeing massive new supply in terms of office and residential spaces.
Thank you so much, Sir Joey. Thanks for that.
Okay, thank you, John. So let me now shift to the other interesting segment. Now, this is another sector that should really highlight the recovery of the property sector. If you look at my next slide, overall, we're seeing very positive numbers. But let me just mention that what really anchors the recovery of the hotel sector is the implementation of a lot of massive infrastructure, especially modernization of airports. But right now, we're seeing more homegrown and even foreign brands that are being opened, not just in Metro Manila, but in other traditional tourism sites in Cebu. We're talking about Clark in Pampanga, Subic, Davao, Bacolod, as well as Iloilo, even Cagayan de Oro. We're seeing new developers, foreign brands opening hotels, accommodation facilities in CDO. And this is also because of increase in international arrivals as well as domestic tourists. Next slide. So all over for the Philippine leisure sector, these are very good figures, 5.45 million international arrivals in 2023 and more than double the 2.65 million international tourists in 2022. Now, the government is projecting international tourist count to reach 7.7 million in 2024, and that's a very good projection. However, that's still lower than the 8.2 million arrivals that the Philippines recorded pre-pandemic. That was the peak number of arrivals that we have recorded for the Philippines. And again, if you look at other tourism markets, especially the major tourism markets of the Philippines, next slide, please. Much of our tourists still coming from the United States, including the Balikbayans, South Korea, Japan, China is no longer a major contributor to international arrivals here in the Philippines. Next slide. So if you look at the tourism sector of the Philippines, it's really recovering. Restaurant and hotel spending in 2023 grew by 19.3% from a contraction of about 43% in 2020. Note that 2020, that was a period when hotel occupancy in Metro Manila was only at about 20%. But right now, we're at 65%. That is as of end of 2023, from only 25% first half of 2020. Next slide. So occupancy in Metro Manila is still very healthy at about 65%. And if you look at 4 and 5-star hotels, they recorded very healthy occupancies, formidable occupancies of about 68 to 66%. Next slide. So the average daily rates continue to increase, whether in Quezon City, Makati, Bay Area, or Fort Bonifacio. So again, if you look at 4, 5-star hotels, business hotels, they continue to record very strong growth in average daily rates, especially for Makati as well as the Bay Area. Next slide. So there will be about 5,100 new hotel room keys that will be turned over for 2024, and this will be the biggest hotel completion that we will be seeing in Metro Manila. So 2024 will be a banner year for hotel delivery across the capital region. Next slide. So if you look at foreign brands, 40% of new hotels that will be completed and that will be open from 2024 up to 2026 are foreign brands. If you look at Makati, of course, we will see the new Mandarin Oriental that will open in 2027. If you look at Fort Bonifacio, you also have other brands. This is a local brand, Seda, of course, by Ayala Land. Quezon City, well, we saw the opening of the first 5-star hotel, Soler. And then San Juan, we have Pullman, the first Pullman brand in the country will be located in San Juan. In the Bay Area, we saw MegaWorld, of course, opening Grand West Side, which is being positioned primed as the largest hotel in the Philippines. Next slide. So these are the recently completed hotels. Hotel 101, Fort Bonifacio, 606 total rooms. Next slide. Red Planet BGC the Fort, 245 hotel rooms. Next slide. Seda Manila Bay, 250 total rooms, and its function room can accommodate 250 people. Next. Lanson's Place, the first Lanson's in the Philippines, 389 total rooms, and its function room has a capacity of 370 people. Next. Oakwood Makati, 150 total rooms and 3 room types. Next slide. Citadines Benavides, 207 total rooms. Next. Citadines Rosas. This one in Quezon City. So the previous one is in Makati. This one is in Rosas, Quezon City. 185 total rooms and capacities for 200 people. Next. So the domestic tourism is making a comeback. As you can see here, top locations include Cebu, Batangas, Camarines Sur, Pampanga, as well as Iloilo. Total domestic trips in 2022, 102 million from only 37 million in 2021. What I want to highlight here is that the local tourism sector is doubling up in terms of total new hotel completion, doubling up in terms of total foreign arrivals, and also including total domestic trips being made across the Philippines. Next slide. So these are the brands that will be opening across the Philippines. I want to highlight that Sofitel Manila will be closing down, of course. Well, it closed already, but there will be new Sofitel brands in Pampanga as well as Cebu. Other upscale brands include Radisson Red, Fairfield, and then Marriott brands in Bohol, as well as Davao. Of course, Citadines also very aggressive in expanding its footprint and will open shop. I think this one recently opened in Bacolod. Next slide. So the Filipino hospitality sector is catching up. It's really bouncing back, but the overall recovery compared to pre-pandemic tourist arrival is about 73%. So this is how the arrivals now compare versus the pre-pandemic arrivals. 73% across Southeast Asia. the Philippines is still catching up because we're at about 66% compared to our peak of 8.2 million in 2019. So hopefully we achieve that by 2025, because the projection is that for 2024 we will only attract about 7.7 million international tourists. Next slide. So the Philippines will achieve its massive development of infrastructure, and that includes the redevelopment of NAIA, 171 billion pesos. The concession period, good for 15 years, can be extended for another 10 years. And look at the doubling of capacity from 31 million to 62 million once this NAIA is modernized and rehabilitated. So it's definitely massive arrivals that will be the Philippines will be attracting. Next slide. So we're now seeing the proliferation of MICE activities, in-person events, and I would say that the SM model is looking very good. So you have now massive SMX and complementing that SMX Convention Center is a nearby park-in hotel. So that's a very good model that is being replicated across the Philippines. Next slide. So these are the hotel sector opportunities. Of course, improving infrastructure, build better, more initiatives of the government. We're seeing the arrival of more foreign businessmen, and they're doing due diligence here in the Philippines, and that will likely result in better hotel occupancies. Definitely, the staycation market is rebounding, especially the young, mobile, active millennial, Gen Z employees fueling this staycation sub-segment, especially the young travelers market. The Philippines being primed and promoted as a MICE hub in Southeast Asia. In fact, we will be seeing MICE conferences in Clark, Cebu, as well as Davao, and also the spillover impact of holiday-induced spending. We saw that fourth quarter of 2023 that spilled over to January and February, and of course, summer spending, seasonal spending, especially in April and May. And again, we're likely to see greater holiday-induced spending for the fourth quarter of 2024. We have other pro-tourism bills, tax refunds for foreign tourists, as well as passenger Bill of Rights amendments, and that will likely stoke greater demand from the domestic market and will likely encourage more Filipinos to travel domestically. Next slide. So that's for the leisure sector. John, do you have questions for the hotel segment?
Just ano lang, one observation lang.
Yeah,
I
sure.
saw there kasi sanay kami makita, let's say, sa mga REITs namin na puro
Yeah.
nasa 80s to 90% occupancy.
Yeah.
Parang you mentioned there sa hotel segment na healthy yung occupancy rate at the
Yes.
60s to 70%. So that's
Yeah.
normal even globally, historically. Yeah.
Sorry, sorry, John, can you repeat the question? Medyo may lag lang.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, 'di ba sanay kami makita namin sa mga REITs namin na usually kumare, let's say even sa mga office spaces nasa 80s to 90s,
Yeah.
and sa mga malls nasa 90s. But in this case, nakita ko yung occupancy rate ng hotels, you were saying na it's healthy siya at the 60s to 70s.
Yes, yes.
So is that a good benchmark going forward? Kasi historically ganun rin ba sa yung other eras, pre-pandemic, tapos ganon?
Well, yeah. In fact, John, we only peaked at about 65 to 70% pre-pandemic. And note that that was a period when we achieved about 8.2 million. So that's a very good benchmark, because imagine we're already reaching vacant occupancies of 65% when we only attracted about 5.5 million back in 2023. So definitely, if we see arrivals further rising to 7.7 million this year, just imagine the impact that will have on hotel occupancies, especially in Metro Manila.
I see. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for
Yes.
that.
Yeah, so let me now shift my discussion to our last sector, the industrial sector. Again, a very stable, sturdy property subsegment, especially at the height of the pandemic, because of rising demand for cold chain facilities. We still see developers aggressively expanding their industrial footprint, especially in Cavite, Laguna, Batangas. So look for developers that will aggressively and massively expand in central and southern Luzon corridors. We're also seeing the rise of emerging industries, including electric vehicles. So look for developers that are aggressively enticing demand from electric vehicle companies, semiconductors, and even those that are into renewable energy projects. Next slide. So overall industrial vacancy, very healthy still at about 5.5%. Much of the locators, occupiers of industrial space and warehouses are e-commerce companies, F&B, equipment manufacturing, as well as third-party logistics providers. Next slide. So marginal increase in lease rates ranging from about 3 to 5%. These are for industrial warehouses as well as land leasehold rates. Next slide. So industrial buildings construction, well, much of these focused on top two regions, top two industrial corridors, including Central Luzon and Calabarzon. That's why, similar to what I mentioned earlier, look for developers that have massive industrial footprint in Central and Calabarzon regions. Next slide. So look at developers that are, again, massively expanding the industrial footprint in Cavite, Laguna, Batangas corridor, as well as Central Luzon. Robinson's Land, Aboitiz Infra Capital, Ayala Land, Philinvest, First Philippine Holdings. So these are developers that are really recalibrating, not just recalibrating, because they want to attract other profile of locators, but also aggressively, massively expanding footprint in these two key regions. Next slide. So approved investments, as you can see here, mostly cornered by Central and Southern Luzon. Next slide. Historical FDIs, well, we want to attract the level of FDIs that our neighbors have been receiving. So of course, one way to do that is to improve our competitiveness, address bottlenecks in business registration, of course, improve our infrastructure connectivity. Next slide. So look at also the investment pledges approved by President Marcos and what type of investment will likely materialize. So we're seeing renewable energy projects, we're seeing electric vehicles, semiconductors, F&B manufacturers. So this will likely drive and propel the FDIs of the Philippines. Next slide. Of course, Philippine Manufacturer or Purchasing Managers Index is very important because an index, PMI index of 50 and higher means expansion of manufacturing activity. So the Philippines PMI only dropped below 50 in 2020, but has increased since 2021, continued increase since 2021. So that's a very good indicator for our manufacturing sector. Next slide. PMI of selected ASEAN economies, the Philippines fares very well across Southeast Asia. Next. These are key priorities. So agriculture, especially agro-industrial, semiconductors, as I mentioned earlier, steel, and even pharmaceutical. Next slide. So upcoming locators, just a snapshot, but I have some specific examples here. Next slide, please. So Murata will build a new facility, $78 million, and this will be completed in 2025. This is in the Calabar region. Next slide. DNL, another industrial locator in Cavite, Laguna, Batangas. So it has allocated $181 million for its expansion. Next slide. Nidec is in Clark, so it will spend $76 million for its expansion. Next slide. Texas Instruments, another locator in Clark, and has allocated $1 billion for its expansion in Clark and Baguio. Next slide, please. TESA is cornering more investments from Japanese locators. So look for developers that are into industrial park development that are housing industrial Japanese locators. So those will be very interesting projects and interesting expansion moving forward. Next slide. So logistics companies continue to expand in Clark and will likely make Clark Freeport a more interesting, a more exciting industrial hub. So look for developers that have massive industrial footprint within Clark Freeport and also within the nearby New Clark City. Next slide, please. So Lloyd Laboratories, a pharmaceutical company, will be expanding in Batangas, in the Bulacan Industrial Park. So pharmaceutical sector, a very interesting segment that occupies industrial space. So look for locators, industrial park developers that are aggressively attracting pharmaceutical companies and those that will likely put up warehouses and facilities within their industrial spaces and parks. Next slide, please. So electric vehicle is definitely a sunshine industry. So you have the likes of Philinvest, Ayala, that are aggressively cornering a huge fraction of the EV industry pie here in the country. Next slide. Hot on cold chain facilities. And you have the likes of Ayala again, very aggressive in terms of expanding their cold chain facilities. What we have seen is that the demand for cold chain facilities, cold chain storage warehouses continues to grow because of the demand for same day delivery, as well as the demand for food and beverage deliveries across Metro Manila and other urban areas, including Cebu, Pampanga, and Davao. Next slide. So these are the recovery enablers for the industrial sector. Again, the industrial supply has been expanding, especially Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, and even New Clark City and Clark Freeport. Also, we're seeing the materialization of investment pledges, and we see F&B, renewable energy, electric vehicles, semiconductor investments materializing soon, and that will also expand and result in greater industrial space absorption. The domestic market's purchasing power is expanding, and with given the growing and expanding economy of the Philippines and the rising purchasing power of Filipinos, we're likely also to see industrial sector expanding beyond 2024. And again, we're seeing more investment pledges, not just from American companies, but also from European locators, Japanese firms, of course, traditional source of foreign investments, and they will likely continue to expand investing here in the Philippines. So look for locators that are developing industrial parks that are aggressively enticing not just our traditional sources of investments, including US, Japan, and Canada, Australia, but also those that are trying to attract other investments from the Middle East, Australia, New Zealand, and other European manufacturers. So those are very interesting prospects for the industrial sector, which I understand and I believe is a growing property segment, which has really recorded stable growth even at the head of the pandemic because of the demand, rising demand for cold chain facilities and modern warehouses. Next slide. So some recommendations for developers, we believe that REITs are a very good instrument for them to access a cheaper source of capital, especially with still elevated interest rate. They may use their REITs to expand their office footprint, especially outside of Metro Manila, and even develop more integrated communities. They can use their REIT proceeds to acquire other recurring income generating assets, including co-working, co-living facilities. Also, a very good opportunity for them to develop more recurring income generating assets, including infrastructure projects, toll roads, and even modern warehouses, logistics facilities. So overall, REIT is a very interesting segment, market for the property sector. And we believe that given the elevated cost of borrowing from banks, this is a very good opportunity from developers to further expand, recalibrate and innovate their projects, especially as we see the property sector recovering and rebounding after the disruption that we saw in 2020 and 2021. So let's see. I think that concludes my presentation. Let's check if that's really my last.
Thank
Oh,
you, Sir
the true
Joey.
state of Philippine real estate. Well, definitely it is recovering, John. But just to give a few insights, definitely office sector, we're seeing stable demand from BPOs, even government agencies. Vacancies still elevated, but again, we will be releasing our projection on the government's decision to ban POGOs by July 31. So let's see. But we're projecting vacancy to remain elevated, especially given this decision to totally ban POGOs across the Philippines, especially in Metro Manila. The retail sector is recovering. We see foreign retailers still occupying brick and mortar spaces. Lease rates are rebounding. Vacancies continue to, well, marginally increase, but only because of supply issues, mainly because of new mall retail centers being opened across Metro Manila. But developers are doing the right thing, and that is renovating, innovating, and offering new spaces, interesting retail spaces to consumers. Hotel sector, a very bullish prospect, especially with rising occupancy, 65%. And we're projecting occupancy to still be above 60%, despite the completion of new hotel rooms, especially in Metro Manila, with 2024 being a banner year for hotel completion across the capital region. And of course, industrial sector remains strong, especially with developers that are aggressively cornering locators from Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, as well as Central Luzon, Pampanga, Bulacan, Tarlac. And given the massive demand for modern warehouses, greater pre-leasing of these facilities, third-party logistics facilities, and also cold chain facilities, we're likely to see industrial sector growing beyond 2024 and will continue to be a major driver of the property sector's recovery in the near to medium term. I think that is my last slide for these for today. Let's check the other slide. I think I just have, well, the usual call your slide. As you can see, we're active on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, so please make sure to follow our social media platforms if you want to learn more about the property market and what are projections moving forward. Also, I write for the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Philstar. Next slide, please. And Business World. So please make sure that you check my columns for these three major dailies in the Philippines. I have here my email address and phone number. So you may get in touch with me if you have other questions. Next slide. I think this is my last slide. Promise, to the last slide. But our previous reports also on the property market, the RP Bara, and how will it impact the property market moving forward. So that concludes my presentation. I hope you learned a thing or two from the insights that I shared, John and Ellie. And I think we're opening the floor for
sobrang insightful. Sobrang insightful. But now, marami kang sasagutin from Ellie's end.
Yes.
Marami questions si Ellie. So Ellie,
yes, Ellie,
give you the floor.
So for the first question, sir, no? So which specific stock or REIT will be greatly affected by POGO ban as mandated during this SONA?
Okay, I'm not gonna mention which developer
Mm.
or which REIT specifically, but look at sublocations again that have elevated vacancies and which developers are concentrated on those business hubs. Again, right now we're seeing very good level of occupancy vacancies in Makati CBD, Fort Bonifacio, and Ortigas Center. But some business hubs where we see challenging levels of vacancies include fringes of Makati. So outside of Makati CBD, Alabang, and then the Bay Area. So those three locations, Makati Fringe, Alabang, Bay Area, and which developers are concentrated in those three locations? Well, I'll leave it to our investors. But again, those three sublocations are experiencing elevated vacancies at this point. If not nearly double the average occupancy in Metro Manila of 19%.
Okay, for the second question, sir, no, what are the effects of artificial intelligence to BPO call center seat industry? If it is a matter of time, what type of customer can replace BPO if it reduces?
Okay, what's interesting is that in fact some BPOs are using AI, artificial intelligence, to complement their services. You have the likes of Concentrix, for example, that provide higher value outsourcing services. You have other KPO companies that are using artificial intelligence that help them support or complement their services to, for example, third-party outsourcing providers. So right now, artificial intelligence, there are reports that it will be a challenge, but right now it is not exactly resulting in the streamlining of office space occupied by outsourcing companies. So major BPO locators such as Concentrix, for example, are in fact using AI to complement the services that they provide to clients. What's important, and this is one of the SONA wish list that I in fact wrote in my Inquirer column, is that the further upgrading of skills of BPO workforce so that we won't be left behind and that we continue to remain relevant in the global workforce, especially if we want to corner a greater fraction of the KPO, knowledge process outsourcing pie, which is right now dominated by India.
Okay. I think Sir John, I will address this question to Sir John. No? Kasi, so which of the two REITs, B-REIT or PhilREIT, is the better option in the long run and a safer one than the other?
Ellie, pinahirapan mo naman ako eh. Oh man. They're both challenge. Ako, yan na lang. I'll be honest. They're both challenge, I feel. That's why yung stock prices nila is really reflecting those challenges as well. Right now talaga, as you guys probably know, pag palagi sa investing club ng Dragonfly, I always just recommend the three right now, which is A-REIT, C-REIT, and RCR. Beyond those three, I feel okay, if you really make me choose between if you read in V-REIT, hard, tough, Ellie, tough question, to be honest. You caught me off guard there. That's a very, very tough question. Pero, Ellie, do you mind if I do you mind if I piggyback on your AI question? I want to may follow-up question ako kay Sir Joey. Kasi
Okay,
I know
sir,
you have more
on.
questions pa eh. Sir Joey, kasi I read a report from one of the major foreign brokers, and they're saying yung generative AI right now is very, very expensive. Not even if you reduce the cost of Gen AI by 50%, hindi pa rin matatamaan yung BPO. But that's for the near term.
Yeah.
However, we really see it, 'di ba? Parang nakikita ko na nga that you can create your own GPTs, 'di ba? And like for example, Nike raw has created its own GPT. And eventually, if you're a Nike customer, you don't even have to talk to a human being and just talk to the Nike GPT.
Yes.
So eventually, do you feel na that's really a threat to our BPO sector?
I think right now, John, kasi if you look at our outsourcing segment, yes, still have back office operations, no? The usual, the regular call center services. But one major reason why you really need to upskill is because you want to achieve the level that India has achieved, which is, really cornering much a bigger slice of the KPO pie. So we want to take up, for example, health information management, the medical coding, medical transcription, di ba? Software engineering, legal transcription, game development. That's why if you see the likes of Iloilo, for example, they're aggressively trying to redevelop the workforce in Iloilo because they want to corner a greater fraction of this KPO. In fact, at some point, they were even trying to attract only the KPO companies, and they were during that period. In fact, they were not really accommodating to the BPO back office BPO outsourcing companies. No, right now we're seeing more of these transactions, especially those that are handling shared service, the captives in Metro Manila. And hopefully, we see a greater improvement of our skill set so that, again, we will somehow be shielded by the impacts of AI. We have yet to see how AI will really evolve, especially in the near term. And that will that really challenge the BPO workforce? And will that really, for example, make our call center back office support um, irrelevant? Right now, we're not seeing that. And again, if you look at our BPO workforce, even BPO companies here, they continue to occupy office space mainly because they're still dealing with the higher value outsourcing services. They are dealing with insurance companies, credit card companies at this point, which are not exactly challenged by the AI influence or the AI technology that we're seeing proliferating right now.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Ellie.
Okay, for the next question, sir, now, do you have data coming from Visayas and Mindanao or just purely Luzon?
Well, we do have data covering Cebu, Bacolod, Iloilo for Visayas, and then for Mindanao, we have data for, well, Cagayan de Oro and Davao. So this includes, for example, office as well as residential segments. So for office, again, the most attractive, of course, in Visayas include Cebu, Bacolod, and Iloilo. In Mindanao, it's Cagayan de Oro and Davao. I think one hotspot that we need to watch out for is Cagayan de Oro, which has been getting a lot of queries from BPO companies. In fact, we have a major BPO tenant that recently looked at these locations in Mindanao. So those include Cagayan de Oro and then Visayas, Rojas City. These are rising BPO hubs also. I think for the outsourcing sector in general, what we're seeing also is the rise of the virtual assistants. And we're seeing that in Iligan, Bukidnon. But will that translate to greater office space take up? We're not seeing that. Meaning, if we see a growing number of virtual assistants in those locations, that does not necessarily translate to greater office space take up. So that's also one of the trends that we're seeing for the office market. Perhaps maybe if the developers can capture this VAs, virtual assistants, and house them in an office space, that will be a very good, very positive development for them. But right now, we're not seeing that.
Okay. Do Colliers have a research articles or report that focuses in the REIT market?
We do have. So we launched one back in 2019, and then we updated that. So again, you have my email or email address. So let me know. And you also have our social media accounts. So let me know. We can send those reports to you.
So, how big is the new supply of mall and office space in the Philippines? Can space demand keep up with the increasing supply?
Okay, right now we don't really cover the entire Philippines in terms of office and retail space. In Metro Manila, that's about 14.4 million square meters of total office space. In the capital region, also about 7.5 million retail space, retail stock across the capital region, across Metro Manila. So that's the total that we have monitored for these two segments, office as well as retail. Again, there will be substantial completion, new supply over the next few years, 2024 to 2026. So about 450,000 square meters of new office space in Metro Manila. For the retail sector, about 160,000 square meters of new mall space that will be completed every year from 2024 to 2026. That's why we always say that also part of the increase in vacancy for office and retail is the increase that is attributable to new supply, new completion of projects. So it is a supply-driven increase in vacancy.
What could be the possible impact in property stocks and REITs if the US Fed decides not to cut interest rates this 2024, while BSP cuts this August?
Well, definitely for the Philippines, let me just focus on the BSP's decision. That will be a very good move also for the property sector, because further cutting of interest rates will result in expansion of businesses, of industrial locators, for example, and hopefully that results in greater absorption of industrial warehouses and industrial space, especially in Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, and Central Luzon corridors. Also, lower interest rates means greater purchasing consumer confidence for Filipino retailers, and that will further stoke retail demand, not just in Metro Manila, but across the Philippines. More Filipinos will be enticed to go out of Metro Manila and spend on their much awaited vacation, and that will also stoke the demand for hotels. So it's a win-win, I would say, for the property sector. And also, even for the residential segment, lower interest rates translate to lower mortgage rates and greater interest for residential units, not just condominium, but also for horizontal projects, house and lot only developments.
So how will Pogo ban affect DDMPR in both short and long term?
Okay, I'm not gonna comment on the specific REIT or developer, but again, because of the POGO ban, we're likely to see vacancy for the office sector increasing. Again, we are adjusting our vacancy mainly because President Marcos just announced this yesterday. But what I can tell you is that we're projecting vacancy, office vacancy, to increase. But note that office vacancy already increased even prior to this announcement and even before it is fully implemented. Again, 2019 vacancy of about 4 to 5%. It increased to about 9% in 2020, and so far with that we're at about 19% office vacancy in Metro Manila. So what does that tell you? Even before this POGO ban announcement, vacancy in the office market of Metro Manila already is already increasing. So we're likely to see an upward adjustment in terms of vacancy, mainly because of this POGO ban also.
So is it possible that SM REIT and GT Cap REIT will be released into the market in the next years?
I'm not too sure about the plan of SM REIT, but what I can tell you is that I think this is one REIT that is also timely, given that the retail sector is recovering, foot traffic, consumer traffic within malls is rebounding even better than pre-pandemic consumer traffic. Purchasing power of Filipinos
the propensity to spend is also increasing, employment situation is improving. So these are very good indicators for SM REIT. The retail sector is on its way to full recovery. We're not just seeing lease rates reverting to pre-pandemic level, but definitely they are on the rise. So that's a very good prospect for SME.
Do you agree with the plans to convert POGOs into the more legal IGLs? Is it not feasible to convert these POGO buildings into other REIT facilities like office spaces, retail spaces, healthcare facilities, or even industrial facilities?
POGO to IGL, what's in the name, right? But what we're seeing is that some of the office spaces that were previously occupied by POGOs and which they have eventually vacated were having a difficult time leasing out those office spaces because it appears that it is now becoming more expensive to rehabilitate, refurbish those office spaces previously occupied by POGO. So again, if you look at office space across Metro Manila, 2.5 million square meters of vacant spaces, a fraction of that coming from the POGO sector. Again, we saw peak office space demand of POGOs in Metro Manila at 1.3 million square meters. That is down to less than half. And POGOs used to cover about 10% of total office stock in Metro Manila. That is significantly down at this point. And we will likely to see further reduction of that office space occupied because of the total ban ordered by President Marcos.
So I noticed that a majority of the data is concentrated in NCR. So my question is, are there REITs and data for REIT stocks that are currently placed in Visayas or Mindanao?
Well, you have other developers, for example, AREIT, that have infused other properties outside of Metro Manila into their REIT vehicle or portfolio, right? So I think for these AREIT or REIT companies that are aggressively looking at the property market's upside, they should look at their properties that are located in the high growth areas, which are located in Bacolod, Iloilo, Bacolod, Iloilo, Cebu, Davao, and Visayas Mindanao. And of course, outside of Visayas Mindanao, and outside of Metro Manila, you still have Pampanga, Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, Batangas. And there are several properties that can be infused into their REIT vehicles because developers have been aggressive and active in developing master plan projects. And within that master plan projects, they have what? Offices, malls, hotels, and even industrial parks and warehouses. So interesting asset classes that can be infused into their REIT vehicles. And also, one of our key recommendations is for developers to look at infusing co-working facilities, co-living facilities, and even infrastructure projects that generate recurring income. And where are these infra projects located? They're mostly located outside of Metro Manila. So very interesting prospects for developers as they expand and diversify their REIT portfolio.
Okay, sir, now for the last question, do you see Park Links and Bridgetown being developed into a mini BGC with international companies and expats moving to the location? So they have similarities in terms of high-end villages in nearby area and CBD.
Yes, for example, if you look at Park Links, so you have projects by Ayala Land, Premier, and Eton there. And these projects are some of the more expensive in the market right now. You also look at Bridgetown, so you have office towers there and also luxury condominium projects. And these are among the most expensive. On a per square meter basis, they're at about what, 220, 250,000 pesos per square, classified as a luxury condominium projects. You have the Opus Mall, which is primarily marketed, positioned as a luxury retail center, mainly because it caters to the residents and users of the nearby luxury condominium projects by RLC. So these are very interesting projects, and these are very innovative integrated communities developed by Ayala Land, Eton, as well as Robinson's Land. And definitely, we will see greater demand and interest for these mini townships, satellite communities that are proliferating outside of traditional business hubs, Makati, Ortigas, and Fort Bonifacio. And of course, the improving connectivity will facilitate further interest and take up in this rising satellite business hubs outside of the traditional ones.
Joey, if you don't mind, can I ask
Yeah,
three more
Sure.
questions?
How many more, John?
Three lang for me. Three lang for me.
Okay, you may
Natanong
ask.
na ni Ellie a bunch of it eh.
You may
Marami
ask two and a
kaming
half.
redundant
Okay.
questions si Ellie.
Okay, fire away.
So, kasi 'di ba right now, 'di ba, marami sa mga REITs infused ng mga new properties from different
Yeah.
sectors, 'di ba? So, to guide us here, yung mga sa audience, kung if you were to create a perfect REIT, ano yung position ng REIT na yun in terms of different sectors? Para at least mag-guide kami kung nakikita namin, for example, itong REIT, ito yung ginagawa niya. In-introduce niya yung mga data centers niya. Yung Ali, pinapasok niya yung mga data centers niya into the REIT. Para alam namin, okay, is this a good thing, a bad thing?
Yeah.
Or, so if you were to create a perfect REIT, ano yung magiging composition ng REIT na yun?
Yeah, well, you mentioned data centers. So, for example, cold chain facilities. These are under industrial sector, di ba? So
Yeah.
if I were to perhaps mix the ideal REIT, I would say in terms of ranking, if you have my totem pole of property segments, first will be REIT, industrial, and then retail, and then hotel, hospitality, leisure. So those are the top three sectors. Office will probably be my fourth, maybe because vacancies are still increasing. And leasing at this point remains challenging, especially given that the president recently announced the banning of POGOs.
Very interesting. So, industrial, correct me if I'm wrong again. Industrial, in terms of rent escalation, mas mababa yan. Pero in terms of lease period, mas mahaba. So yung deal namin mas mahaba, right?
That is correct. Actually, in terms of absolute rents, much lower, right? Compared to other property sectors, say office or malls. But again, because of this sturdy, stable demand that we're seeing in the market. Again, as I mentioned, we are hot on cold storage because there's still a huge demand for cold chain facilities because of the take-up, demand for same-day deliveries, data center, a rising segment here, especially I'd have the pandemic 2020 and 2021 modern warehouses. There's a huge demand. We're recording strong pre-leasing, especially for distribution centers, especially near Metro Manila and key hubs in Kamanava, Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, as well as Valenzuela, those that I mentioned earlier, Caloocan, Malabon, Nabotas, Valenzuela, even Bulacan and Pampanga. So I would say that industrial sector, and again, if you follow Collier's reports, industrial sector has really been stable, even at the height of the pandemic. In fact, there's a report that I made at the height of the pandemic. I wrote at the height of the pandemic in 2020. The industrial sector remains pliant amid a new variant of COVID-19, meaning it's really a sturdy, stable sector, even despite all these new COVID variants. And I have the pandemic in 2020, 2021, 2022. The industrial sector grew at a formidable pace of rental increase and demand, especially in key locations, Calaba, Central Luzon. That's why if you are to invest, look at developers that have massive industrial footprint in these two growing, rising industrial corridors.
So to recap, industrial, retail, and what's the last again?
Hotel? Leisure, hotel.
Leisure. Okay.
Yeah.
Maraming guide kami, shorthand kami.
Office for
Okay. Again, this one medyo ano eh. But I saw sa deck mo na pwede namin i-download, 'di ba?
Yeah.
So ako personally, I'm very curious about the implementation nga ng real property valuation and assessment reform act.
Yeah.
Ang haba nun, so REPAR.
Rapi Vara, di ba?
Rapivara. Okay, so for the benefit of everyone, there's this new law na i-implement na gagawin na nilang unified na ang valuation ng property. Kasi ngayon, right, pag magbabayad tayo ng real property taxes natin, may zonal value, may ganoon. The government ngayon, the BBM administration wants to make a unified database na publicly viewable. And ang gusto nila gawin is this must be updated by the LGUs every 2 to 3 years. Am I correct, right, Joey? Tama, no? Am I
Yeah.
smart?
So actually, the RP Vara, if I'm to sum it up, the goal is to infuse transparency into the currently opaque real estate market in the Philippines, because there's really no depository of all these transactions and values in the Philippine real estate market. So RP Bara will facilitate that, and again, will make the property market more transparent in terms of valuation, in terms of recording of transactions.
Okay. So for the benefit again of the audience, this is really malaking bagay to for REIT investors eh. Why? Kasi tataas yung real property taxes eh. If they update if they update more
Yes.
the valuation. So it's not so kung if you're a commercial property, 2% of the value of the commercial property you have to pay in real property taxes. Plus meron pang isang ba yun? SEPA ba yun? If I'm correct, Joey, yung education fund, the education fund, 1% of 1% of the value of the property for the education fund. So what will that do? Parang ang nakikita nila is for everything, kung let's say yung sinabi ni Joey na nag-rehabilitate ng mga malls, yung SM, kung pinapaganda mo yung office mo, tumataas yung value ng property. So, tataas yung babayaran ng mga developers sa real property taxes.
Actually, ang nalaman ko rin, and what I learned about this RP Bara, John, is that in terms of property, residential or commercial, which property will likely see a substantial increase in value, mainly because, or tax, no? Because of the implementation of RP Bara, I've learned that it's really the commercial, because it's a local government that really imposes the increase in tax rates. And they are unlikely to impose the tax rates of the residents, of the residential properties, because they are trying to woo votes, diba?
Yes.
Their constituents. But sa businesses, well, they're not really after the votes of, say, a couple of businessmen that own a certain building. That's why they're likely to impose higher taxes for a commercial building rather than compared to a residential property. That's what I found out given this RP Bara implementation.
Correct. So that sobrang important yan for REIT investors. Why? Kasi 'di ba, REIT investors we get dividends from the earnings of yung mga rental income ng mga REITs natin, 'di ba? What I saw there is kung let's say for example, Ayala, parang they pay 4% of the total, 'di ba? Sa real property taxes. If the real property taxes doubles, kung sa A-REIT, kung example sa A-REIT, mas mababa yung dividends ng A-REIT and mas mababa yung dividends sa mga. So my question, Joey, is how likely and ano yung speed of implementation ng mga ito ng pagtaas ng real property taxes sa mga property owners?
Okay, interesting. I understand that it will take 2 years of before the full implementation of the measure. I think, John, also, not just the law, but we need to look at the implementing rules and regulations, IRR. I think those have yet to be finalized. That's why one of our key recommendations is for developers to, scrutinize the IRR, because those will really set the rules in terms of raising of values, and will really dictate how much property taxes will will increase. Based on our study, it will really affect all property stakeholders across the spectrum, whether you're an end user, an investor, or a developer. So, yeah.
I see. Okay. Ito na yung last. I promise, this is my last question.
Yeah.
So again, this is for REIT investors, di ba? So typically kasi mga ini-infuse na property are from the offices, malls, hotels.
Yeah.
Okay. Offices, alam natin, is challenge. So yeah, we saw from your deck na bumababa yung ano nila, rental rates nila, right? Yung malls naman, this is what one of your preferred. Kasi higher yung rent escalation. So we should be happy kung ini-infuse
Yeah,
sa
it's getting there. Yeah.
Yep. Tapos, hotels, this one I'm not too familiar with, to be honest. So sa hotels, you're saying na talaga this is your third priority right now. Kasi
Yes.
tourism is becoming a major part of our economy.
That's
I
right.
mean, it's a major push by the current administration and
Yes.
potentially future administrations, right? So pag nag-i-infuse sila ng hotels, necessarily ba, are you guys seeing na, nakita ko kanina ADRs, the average daily rate ng mga pag-stay sa mga hotels, is it on the rise? And kasi right now you
Yeah.
said hindi pa siya pre-pandemic levels, right?
Not
But
yet
in the future,
pre-pandemic
you feel na
level,
it's
but
gonna be higher.
yeah. But the trend so far, John, is encouraging. So again, look at the average occupancy in Metro Manila, 65%, despite only about 5.5 million in 2023. So we're now near the peak that we recorded in 2019. When in 2019, we attract the highest number of tourists at 8.2 million. Diba? And there are other sub-segments of hotel that are still growing. MICE facility, meetings, incentives, conferences, exhibitions, right? We want to make the Philippines the MICE hub of Southeast Asia. That's why we're doing and hosting MICECon in Clark, in Cebu, in Davao. So we really want to make the Philippines an attractive MICE destination. We believe that nothing can really replace the warmth and the need for Filipinos to be in an in-person event, face-to-face event, despite all the technological advances that we're seeing, Google Meet, Zoom, MS Teams. There's really a huge demand for MICE facilities. Again, SM, that's a very good example. But look at other developers also. MegaWorld is building also a MICE facility in Newtown, Mactan, Cebu, right? You're also seeing, I think the Villar Group already announced they're building a massive complex convention center in Villar City. So this is an interesting subsegment for the hotel sector, and we really want to promote the Philippines as a MICE hub across Southeast Asia, and this time we're getting there. We're seeing a lot of business executives visiting the Philippines. In fact, one anecdote that I got is there's a mining conference that a group of mining owners and stakeholders want to put up here in the Philippines. They're planning to have one in Nueva Vizcaya, but there's no available convention center in Nueva Vizcaya. End result, they went to Baguio because that's the nearest where they can find a suitable facility that can accommodate their guests. So this remains a challenge for the Philippines. So hopefully, we see more MICE facilities being constructed moving forward.
Okay, that's it for me. Ellie, anything from your end?
Okay na sir, okay na po. Last remarks lang po.
Sige, please.
Sir. Yes, thank you Sir John and also Sir Joey for making this webinar possible now. This is a big help for our community. And for the rest for the rest of members ng REIT community no na naka-attend ngayon. So I hope you learned a lot today, no. So happy investing everyone.
Yep. Kami rin. I mean, thank you Joey, thank you Ellie.
Yeah.
for engaging with us. I think this was a really, really good event. Kasi yun nga, pag mag-i-invest ka in the real estate sector, right? It really helps pag alam mo saan papunta yung real estate industry.
I left my email address, Ellie and John. So feel free
Yes,
to
please.
email
Oo.
me.
We'll give your email address to Ellie. You can disseminate it to your
Yeah.
diba?
And our social media sites. Follow
Yes.
us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify.
Yep. Ako lang, sir, mag-shameless plug lang ako for Dragonfly.
Please.
Sorry,
Sure.
Ellie. Sorry, So, guys, you can get up to 1,500 cash incentives when you open a Dragonfly account. So, use the code 63A60. So, account opening is now made easy through Dragonfly. The initial deposit requirement is only 1,000. Next slide, please. Moving. Next slide. Yeah. So you can also schedule one-on-one consultation with Dragonfly Investing Club for free. So scan the QR code for our Goal Getter program. Tapos you can also transfer stocks to us for only 150 pesos per stock. Again, I'd like to thank Ellie and Sir Joey. Sa mauulit, I think talaga the community, both the Dragonfly community and the REIT Long-Term Investing Group community really gain a lot of insights today. Basta ang dami mong tidbits for us in the industrial, retail.
Yeah.
Yan takeaway ko. Yan yung takeaway ko talaga. Every time may makikita na ako ngayong mga mag-i-infuse ng property sa mga REITs, yan na yung palagi nasa isip ko. Industrial.
Yung ibang questions ni John leading. Kala mo, hindi ko napansin.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Alam ko binabagyo ngayon. Stay safe and
Bye-bye.
guys enjoyed and learned a lot.